Oh hi, Taryn here with Nicholas. I know it's been a really long time. I've just been absorbing all of the baby snuggles that I can get. I haven't wanted to do anything but just hold him and cuddle him and hang out with Lucas and my husband and just do all the family things. So work has been kind of on the back burner. We did do the market that I was concerned about, which went splendidly with him anyways. There wasn't a ton of sales, which was kind of unfortunate because we were nearly flooded, which was crazy. But he did really well. He was just in the wraps the whole time, so it was great. He's great. He's a sweet little guy. A little teeny tiny thing. So I just know that a lot of you have reached out and you've been asking questions. I'm doing great. I'm just doing this right now because it's the most fun. So anyways, this is an intro to a video that I've actually had finished pre-him. I just hadn't done the voiceover yet. It's just been sitting and I haven't wanted to do it. And just know that probably in the next little while of voiceovers for when I finally start getting back into things, you might hear baby noises in the background, and that's just my life right now. It's kind of how it was with Lucas. When he was little, I started this whole venture when Lucas was about 5 months old. So he's got a younger start date than Lucas did, but I have pictures of Lucas as a baby in a wrap while I'm doing furniture, and I just think it's funny that it all happened because of Lucas, me starting this venture, wanting to be able to stay home with my son, and I just think that's wonderful that I get to carry on with another little guy. So thank you for those of you who've left me messages and emails, and you guys are just very kind and sweet, and thank you for thinking of us. Anyways, okay, let's get into the video. Oh, really? Now, this was all from a thrift haul that you guys watched with me. It's been a while now because baby's 5 weeks old. So yeah, it's been a hot minute. Anyways, these are old. If you watched the last thrift haul video, I'm pretty sure it was the last thrift haul video, that's where I got all of this stuff. I found this cute little box, and I liked the strawberries on it, but I didn't like them over the wood, so everything's just gonna get changed up for this one. Everything, as usual, gets cleaned, and if it needs a scuff sand, I'll give it a scuff sand. Some things have a rougher surface, so it's not that important, but anything that has like a really slick surface, I give it just a little scuff sand. I typically use 220, and it's usually sandpaper that's been used before, so it's probably higher than 220. Now I know I want to do decoupage on this, so I'm doing the base of where I'm going to put the initial image white because that's typically how I go through it, but you don't have to use white. You can use any light color, and then if you want a tint behind it, you can also think about that too. So if you wanted to do like a light green or purple or pink or something, that would tint your paper, but so long as it's light enough to let it show through, you can use that as well. And then this guy is going to get a base of Woodland Harbor, and I know that seems a little strange, but it'll work out, don't worry. And then when I can, I try and use one color and do a lineup of the same color on multiple items. That way those things can be drying while I move on to something else, and it just makes your work go quite a bit faster, being able to push multiple things through in the same color. Now, next up, I'm gonna go in with Goblin Gray. When I asked about this one in the haul video, a lot of you said this was a wreath hanger, and I think you were absolutely right. I would never use it for a wreath hanger. I think I would find something much more fun to use it for. But for those of you who really enjoy wreaths, I feel like this is a good thing for you. I like wreaths on my doors. I don't need to just hang them on a spire, but that's fine. That's probably what I'll name it as on the website and everything. And then of course, doing multiple items in the same color, so Goblin Gray on these two flourishes as well. And I love these, these are super cool. The last one that I just painted in the Woodland Harbor, the one that you just saw before this, that one already sold, so that's a shame for anyone who wants that one. But these two are still available and they look really awesome at the end too. Now for the decoupage, this is the same old, like I always do. I go in with my clear coat, whatever that may be. In this case, it's the Modern Masters. This is a semi-gloss, and I just lay a coat down on the back. These are really easy because they're small areas to work around. There's no curves or anything, it's just a flat surface, so I make sure my paper goes off the edges a bit. That way I can sand it back and get a really smooth edge. And then this paper is also really thick. It's still a tissue paper, but it's a thicker tissue paper, so if I need to pull it up and get any bubbles out, I can, and it's really easy to do that with this without it tearing. For those who don't know, I get all of my tissue papers like this from Zazzle if it is not paper that I've printed myself, which I also do sometimes. And then on these little bookshelves, these turned out so cute. I'm doing the same thing. So they're already white. I don't need to put a base coat down of anything. It's just gonna go on perfectly. And then I just kind of cut out, they already had 90-degree angles on the corners, so I just used the corners. I could fit them in perfectly, and then I let the edges hang off, and then I can sand those back. But it's the same process, clear coat, apply the papers, and then add more clear coat to the top. If you're having trouble, you can always wet your paper a little bit, and sometimes that helps. When I say wet, I don't mean like submerge it, I just mean use your mister bottle and get it wet like that before you apply it down. Now I'm going to go in with the Modern Masters. This is a metallic copper, and this is one of the ones where you can use the sprays with it to make it patina if you want. I don't do that a lot. I've done it a couple times, but I usually just like the color. I think it's beautiful as is, so I just use it as is, which you can totally do. But if you wanted to patina that, it absolutely does, and it looks gorgeous. That way, if you like the really old rustic look, they've got the blue and green sprays and everything, so. This one I loved. That's why I did the Woodland Harbor on these, is because it just makes that copper look really, really rich, and it's gorgeous on there. Now that my edges are dry, I can go in with that sandpaper, and like I said, I just run along the edges, and it gives you a really smooth, clean edge to where it fits perfectly on whatever surface you're doing. And that sandpaper, like I said, was a little soft because I've used it so many times it's no longer 220. So I'm just using my sanding block, which is still a 220, but it's a grittier 220. So that's going to take the edges off a little faster. And when I get to these little corbels, you can see I have splits in the paper. That's because they were rounded, and if I were to just take the sponge sander and get it in there, it would kind of tear it. So I've cut little strips, like snipped out into the curves, so that I could get the sanding block in there and get it torn the way that I want it to. Now I'm going to go in with the taupe color that I've had mixed up that I just keep adding to and making. It's probably a different shade of taupe every single time. If you are someone who is crazy about having the exact same color every time, don't do what I do. Do your colors mixed to the ratio that you want them mixed. I don't ever care about that because I am never going to perfectly match pieces. It's not my style, it's not how I like to do things, but if you are somebody who really needs things to be exact, then make sure you're mixing things up perfectly in ratios. But again, I don't. I just mix it till I like the color taupe that I get, and that's where it goes. This one's actually more of a grayish, I would say, less taupe. But I just liked this color with the paper, so I kind of mixed it, keeping that in mind. Back to these flourishes, I just had to wait till the front side dried because they're so flat. There wasn't really a way that I could paint the entire things without messing it or making a mess somewhere. So I let them dry on the front side, and now I'm just doing the back side. This is still the first coat. Nothing really to see here. Now back to the corbels. The grayish color has dried, and I'm going in with a champagne. And I'm just going to cover the entirety of that with this because I want that to be shiny. It is a great base color for the champagne and it looks lovely with the papers. So that was kind of where my head was at with this. If you were somebody who needs to tape things off, that's fine. Or you could have done the paint first and then done the decoupage paper second, and that would have been a good way to do it. But I'm fine with going in with a small brush and doing tight lines around things, and then if I get a little bit on the paper, since it's already sealed, all you have to do is spray a little rag and it comes right off. And then here I'm going in with the same champagne color but going over the top of the Goblin Gray, and this looks cool too. I was just kind of experimenting with what this looked like over the top of the Goblin Gray color. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, but I really like it. Now I'm going back into the grayish color. I did add a little bit of white to this because I wanted it to be a little bit lighter, and I'm just doing the base coat on this box. I don't want it to be this color at the end. I just want this to be the base coat for the other colors that I'm going to apply over the top. And then of course I was painting it and realized that I wanted to do some molds on top, so I didn't paint that part. I left it blank so that I could put molds down and then just paint the molds with the top of it at the same time. I believe this is the olive branch mold from IOD, and I use paper clay. Works great. And it's super fast, and you can paint it pretty quickly. If you paint it immediately after it comes out, you might lose some of the detail, which could be something that you want depending on the project that you're doing, or you can let it get kind of like a crust on the outside, like letting it dry for a few minutes before you start painting, and that usually works really well, and then it can finish drying out overnight, because so long as you don't seal the paint, well, my paint anyways, because I use Chalk Mountain paint, it will still dry, cure, do all the things overnight, and then you can seal it after everything is dried up. This is me just using my sanding block as a measure so I can get it, you know, center-ish, because I'm not actually going to get out a ruler to make that happen. You guys know I've been doing my frames and things like this where I get something gold and I just do a wash over the top, and I was like, oh, I bet it would look really cool with this color blue and copper. So that's where I was going with this. I just did the copper over the top. Obviously I had to make my own metallic base underneath first, but man, I love this so much. It's just like how I enjoy it with the gold. I hadn't done anything with copper, and I have not had to paint my own base metallic before. I always just find something at the thrift store that is already gold with a wash over the top, and I mean, it just didn't take that much longer to do it myself on something that I felt really needed it. So if you want the metallic color to come through even more, you can do more of a wash, or you can take your rag, dampen it, and it will wipe back more of the paint on the higher areas. So it's just kind of the finish that you want to go. And then for these flourishes, I'm just going to be adding a bunch of different layers of paint. This is just dry brushing white. I'm just seeing what happens with these because I don't really know how I want these to end up. I'm just playing around and figuring out what I like as I'm going. And that tends to be how I work a lot of the time. And then back over to the copper guy. Instead of I'm doing a little bit thicker paint on this one, and it'll still go back and wipe it back. And then I'm even fine with some of the original color coming through on this too. I'm just, like I said, playing around with stuff, seeing how I like it, how it works with these metallic paints underneath, and just having fun. Now I'm going in with some gold gilding wax, and I'm just going to hit the high points and see where this takes me. I don't go in too crazy. I love using my fingers with this stuff. I feel like I just have a bit more control. You can use a brush. You can do buffing. There's lots of ways to use this, but my finger tends to be the fastest, and that's usually the route that I end up taking with this. For these, I wanted them to be not a super clean finish. I wanted it to be more lived in, rustic, you know, that kind of old world vibe that I really enjoy these days. Now this seems silly, but I wanted to put some of this paper on the front little applique that I did. I had to find a spot because this is a very large print that had smaller images on it. That way you could get more color and you could kind of see more of an image instead of just a piece of a flower petal. So that's all I did, was just try and find an area that would work and have multiple tones and shapes and stuff in it. And then I'm just going to use my finger, kind of scrape along the edges to get a general outline of what I need. And then I have that little brush dipped in water, and I'm going to use that to help me tear it and get kind of a generalized shape of the inside of that. So then I kind of just go back and forth between the brush and water, and then I have some scissors out too to get any sharper areas that I need to get until it fits in to my liking. And now I'm just going to decoupage it on like normal with the clear coat and a brush. While that is drying, I'm just going to get a damp rag and a little bit of a wash, and I'm using grays and some other colors that I think complement the papers, and I'm just going to do the ragging technique all over this thing to give a whole bunch of like colored, layered, really old effect. That was my plan with this box. So you can also tape off the hinges. I'm not worried about that. You can also go back with a rag and clean them so that they stay the really bright, shiny brass, which is what I do. But if you're somebody who likes things to be a little bit cleaner, you could always tape those off. I am not one of those people. This is where I find one of those things where more is more. So the more dabbing that I do, the less kind of like sponge painty it looks, and the more old world it looks. So I like to keep going, and that's not necessarily adding more paint, but it is adding more textures from the rag and moving the rag around so I'm not using the exact same pattern of the rag. And then I'm just going in with some white, which is just a whitewash also, and I will do the same thing with the rag, only this time I'm painting it on, but this time it's getting pulled back with the rag. So it's getting those colors underneath to come through, but lightening it up and still having the same kind of effect, but this one's a little bit harsher. And because I did the white around the thing first, it had longer to sit on there, so when I went to pull it back with the cloth, it pulled back more there because it reactivated the paint underneath, which was kind of annoying, so I had to go through and fix that as well. But I just went through, added colors, did more texture with the rag until I got something that I enjoyed in the end. Now this is gold leaf glue. You need very little of this. As you can see, I'm just using a tiny brush and I'm taking it off the little lid part because I'm going to add gold leaf just to this top area. You want to let this set up. It gets tacky as it dries. So you let it set up for a bit and then you can add your gold leaf. While I'm waiting for that glue to get tacky, I'm going to go over the Goblin Gray on the wreath hanger and just do a whitewash. So for this one, I actually sprayed the wreath hanger with some water, and I'm also adding a wash to it, and that just helps the wash kind of go everywhere. And I'm going to do the same ragging technique where it just kind of pulls back the color and leaves that really cool impression from the rag. Now that our glue is tacky, I'm going to go in with my little gold leaf pieces. You can use full sheets for this. I have both full sheets and these little pieces. I like little pieces for stuff like this just because it's really easy to grab them with a brush. It's a small surface and there's no reason for me to kind of throw a whole sheet on there, and it's just going to make a bunch of tiny pieces anyways. So this little bag of them works great. You just get a dry brush and stick it in the bag. It clings to it and then it just goes right on. This stuff is messy, so just be prepared for that if you've never dealt with it before. But the glue is really great because it is very, very sticky and really, really clings onto the gold leaf. So I'm going to let the gold leaf kind of settle for a minute on the adhesive, and I'm going to go in with my gold gilding wax and just hit those hinges really quick. I cleaned them off a few times and then I ended up just being like, what's the point? I'm going to keep going over with paint anyways. So I'm just going to use gilding wax to shine them up again. And then I'm going to use like an excessive amount of clear coat over the top of the applique and gold leaf and everything, just because I want it to be super shiny and very on there, if you know what I mean. So I use quite a bit there, and then I'll just go ahead and seal the entirety of the box with it. Once the top coat is dry, I'm just going to go in with a cloth and some white wax, and that's just going to add another layer of color and texture to make this thing again appear old, lived in, all the good things that I like about the old world finish. Now I'm going to go through and seal some things up with some clear wax. I'll use clear wax or white wax, just kind of depending on the look that I'm trying to go for. Clear wax for this one was a definite must because I'm already using the lighter colors in the shallow areas on the piece, so putting white wax in there would just kind of defeat the purpose of that. On the wreath hanger, I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep the gray base or not, and this was an or not situation. Since I already had the copper out and I felt like it would go really great with the goblin gray color, I just went ahead and did the base in this, and I think it was a pretty good choice. I really like the color combination here, which led me to like emphasize all these other little pieces on it with the copper as well, and I think it turned out amazing. Again, I'm doing more sealing with the clear wax. It's just a really easy thing to seal things with because you don't have to, there is a dry time, but it doesn't matter if something touches it, you know, while it's drying. So clear wax is a really safe, easy, I just love waxes for this. I know it seems strange, but I'm taking some antique gold and I'm going to hit the high points of this piece. I know it's fully copper and has the kind of set in whitewash on it, but this just added such a nice contrast. Not a huge contrast, but a small one, and it looked really, really cool when it was finished. Then with the wreath hanger, I'm going to actually seal it with white wax, and that's because we already did the whitewash on it. This is going to add just a little more of that lightness to it and seal it up as well. Since I was already being inspired by this paper, I decided to take that inspiration a little bit further and just kind of take the ideas of the flowers on there with my wood burner and put it on the cheese dish. And I think it turned out really, really sweet. All right, that's it for this video. I really appreciate you guys being here. We got some stuff kind of staged up for photos, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Little guy's napping.